But this afternoon, I'm saying we, this diverse group from all over, are coming together to create a kind of unity, right? Focused on a particular writer and on a particular part of his collected writings, the Fables of Robert Louis Stevenson. And there he is. Stevenson wrote his fables, there are 22 of them, over a period of years. His writing career lasted only 20 years until he died at age 44. Only one or two of the fables can be very accurately dated. The best we can do with most is offer a rough guess about when they were written. It's clear, at least I think it's clear, that Stevenson was attracted to this literary form as a way of illustrating various moral and philosophical discussions he was having with himself. Ethics, he once wrote, was his veiled mistress. He might say that these naughty fables were the way he wooed his mistress. Stevenson's ethics and the fables that came out of his ethical thinking can take their place, I propose, in the contemplative tradition, the long line of spiritual wisdom that rises above duality, bringing diversity into unity. Stevenson was not aware that he was part of this tradition, which, except for the American transcendentalists, was not something people in his culture talked much about. So we might call him a crypto-contemplative. What I want to do today is share some of these fables with you, trying to bring out the contemplative aspects in them, not just because sharing my delight with you is delightful, but because I want to hear your comments and your ideas and suggestions about these stories afterwards. Now, one way to shape our discussion is through a sort of narrative of the steps from diversity to unity, a kind of mythic journey from the wasteland, a sterile region of self-centered individuality, through a period of awakening to an experience of unity. We'll let a selection from Stevenson's fables dramatize the progression through these steps. So first, the wasteland, where all journeys start from. Here's a short fable called The Citizen and the Traveler. And when I read these, my accent sort of changes a bit from educated Philadelphia to uneducated Edinburgh. Look round you, said the citizen. This is the largest market in the world. Oh, surely not, said the traveler. Well, perhaps not the largest, said the citizen, but much the best. Oh, you're certainly wrong there, said the traveler. I can tell you. They buried the stranger at the dusk. It's so short, you may not have been ready to take it in, so here it is again. Look round you, said the citizen. This is the largest market in the world. Oh, surely not, said the traveler. Well, perhaps not the largest, said the citizen, but much the best. Oh, you're certainly wrong there, said the traveler. I can tell you. They buried the stranger at the dusk. The fable ends, as do many of Stevenson's fables, with unexpected violence, shocking us into paying attention, as does the odd phrasing of at the dusk. What are we attending to here, then? It seems clear that this citizen lives in a world of us and them, which almost inevitably leads to the chauvinistic belief that we are great and all of those others are inferior. Our egos will not let it be otherwise. So here is this citizen, so proud of his market, the largest market in the world, or so he thinks, or maybe so he has been told. I think we must believe the traveler that this is not true. I can tell you, he begins to say, apparently going to speak from his own experience of other larger markets elsewhere. He does not have time to finish his sentence, though. In the space between this line and the final line, we're left to imagine that he has been whisked away and slaughtered. Then they buried the stranger at the dusk. Notice that the single citizen has now become they. A whole group is complicit. There is a kind of unity, I suppose, but they are united against an enemy which is only a limited unity, or what we can call the tribal ego. Furthermore, the traveler has now become the stranger. They identify him as other, which both fuels and justifies their killing. That seems fairly easy, but the fable prepares another twist for us if we think about the behavior of this traveler, stranger. The traveler tells the truth, or is about to tell the truth, but is that the best way to act? The traveler has shown no awareness of the citizen's feelings. If he says this is the largest market in the world, you don't reply, oh, surely not. You find something pleasing to say in return, like, wow, it must take quite a lot of people to clean up the place at the end of the day. That, however fatuous, is a unifying reply. But the traveler reinforces in his very words their sense that he's an other. This is what happens in the wasteland. We can also see a different angle of this kind of self-contained life, isolated with no sense of unity, a life of desire but no fulfillment until the final fulfillment of despair. This is not, properly speaking, a fable, but a fairy tale called The Song of the Morrow. It's a bleak story, but I think it's one of Stevenson's best achievements for its eerie language and strange, otherworldly atmosphere. The princess, isolated in a castle by the sea, loses her innocence once she starts thinking about the morrow and desiring the power upon the hour. That is, leaving the present world and desiring things in the future, but unable, cut off from everything, to acquire what she longs for. Look, this is such a fine story and so much fun, actually, to read and to listen to, that I'm going to give you the whole tale. Consider this talk as a kind of story time. Are you sitting comfortably? It will take about 10 minutes, so settle back for the Song of the Morrow. The king of Duntreim had a daughter when he was old, and she was the fairest king's daughter between two seas. Her hair was like spun gold, and her eyes like pools in a river. And the king gave her a castle upon the sea beach, with a terrace and a court of the hewn stone, and 4 towers at the 4 corners. Here she dwelt and grew up, and had no care for the morrow, and no power upon the hour, after the manner of simple men. It befell that she walked one day by the beach of the sea, when it was autumn, and the wind blew from the place of rains, and upon the one hand of her the sea beat, and upon the other the dead leaves ran. This was the loneliest beach between 2 seas, and strange things had been done there in the ancient ages. Now the king's daughter was aware of a crone that sat upon the beach. The sea foam ran to her feet, and the dead leaves swarmed about her back, and the rags blew about her face in the blowing of the wind. Now, said the king's daughter, and she named the holy name, this is the most unhappy old crone between 2 seas. Daughter of a king, said the crone, you dwell in a stone house, and your hair is like the gold, but what is your profit? Life is not long, nor lives strong, and you live after the way of simple men, and have no thought for the morrow, and no power upon the hour. Thought for the morrow, that I have, said the king's daughter, but power upon the hour, that I have not. And she mused with herself. Then the crone smote her lean hands one within the other and laughed like a seagull. "Home," cried she, "O daughter of a king, home to your stone house, for the longing is come upon you now, nor can you live any more after the manner of simple men. Home and toil and suffer till the gift come that will make you bear, and till the man come that will bring you care." The king's daughter made no more ado, but she turned about and went home to her house in silence. And when she was come into her chamber, she called for her nurse. "Nurse," said the king's daughter, "thought is come upon me for the morrow, so that I can live no more after the manner of simple men. Tell me what I must do that I may have power upon the hour." Then the nurse moaned like a snow wind. "Alas," said she, "that this thing should be. But the thought is gone into your marrow, nor is there any cure against the thought. Be it so then, even as you will. Though power is less than weakness, power shall you have. And though the thought is colder than winter, yet shall you think it to an end." So the king's daughter sat in her vaulted chamber in the masoned house, and she thought upon the thought. 9 years she sat, and the sea beat upon the terrace, and the gulls cried about the turrets, and the wind crooned in the chimneys of the house. 9 years she came not abroad, nor tasted the clean air, neither saw God's sky. 9 years she sat and looked neither to the right nor to the left, nor heard speech of any one, but thought upon the thought of the morrow. And her nurse fed her in silence, and she took of the food with her left hand and ate it without grace. Now when the 9 years were out, it fell dusk in the autumn, and there came a sound in the wind like a sound of piping. At that, the nurse lifted up her finger in the vaulted house. "I hear a sound in the wind," said she, "that is like the sound of piping." "It is but a little sound," said the king's daughter, "but yet it is sound enough for me." So they went down in the dusk to the doors of the house and along the beach of the sea. The waves beat upon the one hand, and upon the other the dead leaves ran, and the clouds raced in the sky, and the gulls flew widdershins. And when they came to that part of the beach where strange things had been done in the ancient ages, lo, there was the crone, and she was dancing widdershins. "What makes you dance widdershins, old crone?" said the king's daughter, "here upon the bleak beach between the waves and the dead leaves?" "I hear a sound in the wind that is like a sound of piping," quoth she, "and it is for that that I dance widdershins. For the gift comes that will make you bear, and the man comes that must bring you care. But for me the morrow is come that I have thought upon, and the hour of my power." "How comes it, crone," said the king's daughter, "that you waver like a rag and pale like a dead leaf before my eyes?" "Because the morrow has come that I have thought upon, and the hour of my power," said the crone, and she fell on the beach, and lo, she was but stalks of the sea tangle, and dust of the sea sand, and the sand lies hopped upon the place of her. "This is the strangest thing that befell between two seas," said the king's daughter of Dunshine. But the nurse broke out and moaned like an autumn gale. "I am weary of the wind," quoth she, and she bewailed her day. The king's daughter was aware of a man upon the beach. He went hooded so that none might perceive his face, and a pipe was underneath his arm. The sound of his pipe was like singing wasps, and like the wind that sings in window straw, and it took hold upon men's ears like the crying of gulls. "Are you the comer?" quoth the king's daughter of Dunshine. I am the comer, said he, and these are the pipes that a man may hear, and I have power upon the hour, and this is the song of the morrow. And he piped the song of the morrow, and it was long as years, and the nurse wept out aloud at the hearing of it. This is true, said the king's daughter, that you pipe the song of the morrow, but that ye have power upon the hour, how may I know that? Show me a marvel here upon the beach between the waves and the dead leaves. And the man said, upon whom? Well, here is my nurse, quoth the king's daughter. She is weary of the wind. Show me a good marvel upon her. And lo, the nurse fell upon the beach as it were 2 handfuls of dead leaves. And the wind whirled them widowshins, and the sand lies hopped between. It is true, said the king's daughter of Duntrine, you are the comer, and you have power upon the hour. Come with me to my stone house. So they went by the sea margin, and the man piped the song of the morrow, and the leaves followed behind them as they went. Then they sat down together, and the sea beat on the terrace, and the gulls cried about the towers, and the wind crooned in the chimneys of the house. 9 years they sat, and every year when it fell autumn, the man said, this is the hour, and I have power in it. And the daughter of the king said, nay, but pipe me the song of the morrow. And he piped it, and it was long, like years. Now when the 9 years were gone, the king's daughter of Duntrine got her to her feet, like one that remembers. And she looked about her in the masoned house, and all her servants were gone. Only the man that piped sat upon the terrace with the hood upon his face. And as he piped, the leaves ran about the terrace, and the sea beat along the wall. And then she cried to him with a great voice, this is the hour, and let me see the power of it. And with that, the wind blew off the hood from the man's face, and lo, there was no man there. Only the clothes and the hood and the pipe tumbled one upon another in a corner of the terrace, and the dead leaves ran over them. And the king's daughter of Duntrine got her to that part of the beach where strange things had been done in the ancient ages, and there she sat her down. The sea foam ran to her feet, and the dead leaves swarmed about her back, and the veil blew about her face in the blowing of the wind. And when she lifted up her eyes, there was the daughter of a king come walking on the beach. Her hair was like the spun gold, and her eyes like pools in a river, and she had no thought for the morrow, and no power upon the hour, after the manner of simple men. Well, how do we follow that? Let's end it here. No, we won't end it. We've got things to say. There are other ways we deceive ourselves. She deceives herself by just thinking about thinking. That's the wasteland. But there are other ways we think we might have power upon the hour, notably by abstract thinking, as though intellectualizing gives us some control over the present moment. Stevenson's fables take this to the extreme and show the absurdity of such abstract thinking, which actually, far from giving us power over the hour, abstract us from the present moment, which is doubly absurd when we're facing a crisis, as here in the fable of the sick man and the fireman. Notice Stevenson's skill in eliminating every unnecessary detail, giving us just the bare dialogue with a few telling details. The sick man and the fireman. There was once a sick man in a burning house, to whom there entered a fireman. Do not save me, said the sick man, save those who are strong. Oh, will you kindly tell me why, inquired the fireman, for he was a civil fellow. Nothing could possibly be fairer, said the sick man. The strong should be preferred in all cases because they are of more service in the world. The fireman pondered a while, for he was a man of some philosophy. Granted, said he at last, as a part of the roof fell in, but for the sake of conversation, what would you lay down as the proper service of the strong? Oh, nothing could possibly be easier, returned the sick man. The proper service of the strong is to help the weak. Again the fireman reflected, for there was nothing hasty about this excellent creature. I could forgive you being sick, he said at last, as a portion of the wall fell out, but I cannot bear your being such a fool. And with that he heaved up his fireman's axe, for he was eminently just, and clove the sick man to the bed. Well, there's another unexpected violent ending. The absurdity is heightened by Stevenson's deadpan presentation. We may laugh, well, briefly, at the ending, if only just to dispel our shock. But we may come away with an itch in our mind that there is more going on than just the joke of persisting in argumentation in a time of crisis when action is obviously what's needed. Besides the sick man's circular reasoning, notice the false assumption in what the sick man says. The strong man is valuable, according to the sick man, because of what he can do. By this argument, we value other people by their abilities. We all do this much of the time when, for instance, we're proud of our children for doing well in school, or we follow a singer because she performs so well on stage, or we pay an athlete huge sums for being so good on the court or the pitch or whatever. We single them out as special, in contrast to the rest of us. The sick man divides the world into two disparate groups, the strong and the weak. If a strong man is valued highly, though, does that mean that a sick man is valued less? This is a world of competitiveness, not unity. Surely a vision of unity should see all people as valuable. In a crisis, you don't stand around discussing who's most worth saving. You save whomever you can reach. Or you can isolate yourself with, in another way, with too much useless introspection, especially the pseudo-pleasure of dwelling on our faults and problems, as we see in the short, understated fable, The Penitent. A man met a lad weeping. "What do you weep for?" he said. "I'm weeping for my sins," said the lad. "You must have little to do," said the man. The next day they met again. Once more the lad was weeping. "Why do you weep now?" asked the man. "I'm weeping because I have nothing to eat," said the lad. "I thought it would come to that," said the man. Well, we could extend this to all those mental actions we are all familiar with, dwelling on the past as a subtle way of avoiding what is right here before us. The Devil and the Innkeeper is a fable that addresses this problem and I think moves us out of the wasteland. What do we do when we discover these infectious thoughts playing mischief within us? It's dramatized here as a confrontation with the devil and the innkeeper. Once upon a time, the devil stayed at an inn where no one knew him, for they were people whose education had been neglected. He was bent on mischief and for a time kept everybody by the ears. But at last the innkeeper set a watch upon the devil and took him in the fact. The innkeeper got a rope's end. "Now I'm going to thrash you," said the innkeeper. "Oh, you've no right to be angry with me," said the devil. "I'm only the devil, and it's my nature to do wrong." "Is that so?" said the innkeeper. "Fact, I assure you," said the devil. "You really cannot help doing ill?" asked the innkeeper. Not in the smallest, said the devil. It would be useless cruelty to thrash a thing like me. It would indeed, said the innkeeper, and he made a noose and hanged the devil. There, said the innkeeper. See, when we catch ourselves taken over by harmful thoughts, we don't just thrash ourselves. That's self-indulgent. It may feel good to punish ourselves, but it has no lasting effect and keeps us turned inward. Like the penitent lad, we retreat from the present moment and end up starving. Instead, we transform our rope into a noose and just hang the devil. We turn away from those thoughts and perhaps avoid what used to be called the occasions of sin. We make a clean break and move on with the tasks of the day. The problem, of course, is that becoming more conscious of your thoughts for the morrow, of your absurdities, being more conscious of your sins and then moving on from them, you may just find that all the certainties that had been guiding your life have crumbled. This is no trivial problem. What do you do? For many contemplatives, the one certainty to hold on to is the truth of the present moment. For Stevenson, the present moment is often represented as your relationship to other people, with other people. And look at what happens to the missionary in the tale, Something in It. There's no time to read the whole piece, so I'll summarize part of it and jump in towards the end. It's a story of a missionary in the South Seas who has been warned by the indigenous people about the taboos on the island. One taboo concerned a house of yellow reeds. Anyone who touched it became instantly the prey of Aka-anga and was handed on by him to Miru the Ruddy and hocused with the kava of the dead and baked in the ovens and eaten by the eaters of the dead. That's their mythic account of what happens after death. The other taboo concerns a bay upon that island, a very fair bay to look upon, but by the natives saying it was death to bathe there. Now, the missionary dismissed both of these taboos as superstitions. There is nothing in that, he instructed them. To prove that the taboo on the bay was false, the missionary went swimming there. But to his amazement, he was taken up by an eddy, which pulled him away from the land. The harder he swam, the more the eddy carried him away until he came to a house raised on piles from out of the sea. The missionary climbed the ladder leading into the house, unafraid, since he knew there was nothing in the taboo. There was no one in the house, and looking out, he could not see the land. It had disappeared. It is strange about the island, said the missionary, but who's afraid? My stories are the true ones. But once he put his hand on one of the shells decorating the walls, suddenly the whole scene vanished, burst like a bubble and was gone, and night closed upon him, and the waters and the meshes of the net, and he wallowed there like a fish. He began to have second thoughts. A body would think there was something in this, said the missionary. But if these tales are true, I wonder what about my tales? And now he finds himself in the midst of a real-life enactment of the Polynesian myth. Aka-anga comes and, holding the man between his finger and his thumb, carries him dripping over to the place of the ovens of Miru. And there was Miru, ruddy in the glow of the ovens. And there sat her 4 daughters and made the kava of the dead. And there sat the comers out of the islands of the living, dripping and lamenting. The kava is an intoxicating drink used in the South Seas. Well, this was terrible, but what was worse, one of the missionaries' converts was there right next to him. How about all your stories? Asked the convert. Well, it seems said the missionary with bursting tears, that there was nothing in them. Here is the ultimate defeat, black night of the soul. All his myths, upon which he had placed all his beliefs, have now been proven false. He must let go of all these abstract doctrines he had so confidently held tight to. Myths and doctrines, by the way, that enabled him, in the name of righteousness, to exclude anyone who did not agree with him. He has been forced out of the wasteland. But now what? All this time, the death goddess Miru's ritual has been proceeding, with the preparation of the intoxicating drink kava, designed to alleviate the fear and pain as the soul is then eaten by the goddess Miru the Ruddy. Let's continue with the text, the end of the tale. Desire of that kava rose in the missionary's bosom. He lusted for it like a swimmer for the land or a bridegroom for his bride, and he reached out his hand and took the bowl and would have drunk, and then he remembered and put it back. Drink, sang the daughter of Miru. There is no kava like the kava of the dead, and to drink of it once is the reward of living. Thank you, it smells excellent, said the missionary, but I'm a blue ribbon man myself. That is, he's taken an oath to abstain from all alcohol. And though I am aware there is a difference of opinion even in our own confession, I have always held kava to be excluded. And of course, here we see one of the taboos of 19th century Christianity, the taboo on strong drink. What? Cried the convert. Are you going to respect a taboo at a time like this? And you were always so opposed to taboos when you were alive. To other people's, said the missionary, never to my own. But yours have all proved wrong, said the convert. It looks like it, said the missionary, and I can't help that. No reason why I should break my word. I never heard the like of this, cried the daughter of Miru. Pray, what do you expect to gain? That's not the point, said the missionary. I took this pledge for others. I am not going to break it for myself. The daughter of Miru was puzzled, and she came and told her mother, and Miru was vexed, and they went and told Akaanga. I don't know what to do about this, said Akaanga, and he came and reasoned with the missionary. But there is such a thing as right and wrong, said the missionary, and your ovens cannot alter that. Give the kava to the rest, said Akaanga to the daughters of Miru. I must get rid of this sea lawyer instantly, or worse will come of it. The next moment, the missionary came up in the midst of the sea, and there before him were the palm trees of the island. He swam to the shore gladly and landed. Much matter of thought was in that missionary's mind. I seem to have been misinformed upon some points, said he. Perhaps there is not much as I supposed, but there is something in it after all. Let me be glad of that. And he rang the bell for service. See, what is he left with that allows him to carry on with his life after all his beliefs have been destroyed? There is such a thing as right and wrong, he says. Where do we see the right and wrong? Not in doctrines or myths, but in personal relationship. I took this pledge for others, and I'm not going to break it for myself, he says. He lusts for that kava, and drinking it would alleviate the pain he's about to face, but he refuses to break his pledge for his own comfort if it means breaking his promise to others. He would not be the means of destroying this convert's faith, not in Christianity, but in the missionary's goodwill towards a fellow human being. He has learned to let go of concepts and holds fast to the present moment before him and to his relationship with his convert. We're ready now for the moral at the end of this tale. It's one of the handful of fables in the collection that actually have an explicit moral, or perhaps it's not quite so explicit. Moral: the sticks break, the stones crumble, the eternal altars tilt and tumble. Sanctions and tales dislimn like mists about the amazed evangelist. He stands unshook from age to youth upon one pinpoint of the truth. You have to have something to give you direction. It's what the contemplative traditions call following your heart, living with compassion, or in more secular terms, being true to your relationships with other people and also the non-human world around us with whom we also have relationship. That may be all we need, the one pinpoint of truth. This missionary can continue to ring the bell for service, though I wonder what his sermons will now be like. I suspect the sermons will be concerned much less with doctrine and with certainty, and much more with the simple truths of kindness and loyalty. He will have a better chance of bringing unity to the different cultures on his island than he would have by insisting on his stories, and declaring there's nothing in the other stories. By the way, read Stevenson's short story, The Beach of Falesa, to see another treatment of this theme set in the South Seas. In the mythic pattern, after his death experience and his enlightenment, the hero can return to the wasteland and heal the sterility there. But alas, it doesn't always work this way. Sometimes the wasteland cannot be healed. This is what the prince in the touchstone discovers. He ventures off on a quest for the true touchstone, which will show the truth of all things. This is a fairy tale with two sons of a king and the daughter of another king who was as fair as the morn, and one that smiled and looked down. Both princes fall in love with her beauty and modesty. Her father proclaims that he will give his daughter to whichever son finds the true touchstone. The younger son, led by his hypocrite of a father, returns to the king with a piece of a mirror, which of course reflects only the surface of things. That's enough for the superficial king, pleased to think his outward display indicates his true worthiness. The elder son, however, wanders for years, earnestly searching for the touchstone. He asks everyone if they have the touchstone of the trial of truth. Everyone is glad to give him their stone, though many are clearly not the true stone. But sometimes the stone, and I'll read from the fable itself now, sometimes the stone would be a touchstone indeed, beautiful in hue, adorned with polishing, the light inhabiting its sides. And when he found this, he would beg the thing, and the persons of that place would give it him, for all men were very generous of that gift. So that at the last, he had his wallet full of them, and they chinked together when he rode. And when he halted by the side of the way, he would take them out and try them, till his head ached, till his head turned like the sails upon a windmill. "A murrain upon this business," said the elder son, "for I perceive no end to it. Here I have the red, and here the blue and the green, and to me they seem all excellent, and yet shame each other. A murrain on the trade, if it were not for the king whom I have called my father, and if it were not for the fair maid of the castle that makes my mouth to sing and my heart enlarge, I would even tumble them all into the salt sea and go home and be a king like other folk." But no, he has left the wasteland of his father's world. He cannot return to a life of social conformity and be a king like other folk. Let me read the rest of the tale to the end. By the way, Stevenson uses the old Scottish word dun, D-U-N, meaning a castle, to add to the story's antique viewing. Now, after many years, the elder son came upon the sides of the salt sea, and it was night and a savage place, and the clamor of the sea was loud. There he was aware of a house and a man that sat there by the light of a candle, for he had no fire. Now the elder son came in to him, and the man gave him water to drink, for he had no bread, and wagged his head when he was spoken to, for he had no words. Have you the touchstone of truth? Asked the elder son. And when the man had wagged his head, I might have known that, cried the elder son. I have here a wallet full of them. And with that he laughed, although his heart was weary. And with that the man laughed too. And with the fuff of his laughter, the candle went out. Sleep, said the man, for now I think you have come far enough, and your quest is ended, and my candle is out. Now when the morning came, the man gave him a clear pebble in his hand, and it had no beauty and no color, and the elder son looked upon it scornfully and shook his head, and he went away, for it seemed a small affair to him. All that day he rode, and his mind was quiet, and the desire of the chase allayed. How if this poor pebble be the touchstone after all, said he, and he got down from his horse and emptied forth his wallet by the side of the way. Now in the light of each other, all the touchstones lost their hue and fire and withered like stars at morning. But in the light of the pebble, their beauty remained. Only the pebble was the most bright. And the elder son smote upon his brow. How if this be the truth, he cried, that all are a little true? And he took the pebble and turned its light upon the heavens, and they deepened above him like the pit. And he turned it on the hills, and the hills were cold and rugged, but life ran in their sides, so that his own life bounded. And he turned it on the dust, and he beheld the dust with joy and terror. And he turned it on himself, and kneeled down and prayed. Now thanks be to God, said the elder son, I have found the touchstone. And now I may turn my reins and ride home to the king and to the maid of the dun that makes my mouth to sing and my heart enlarge. Now, when he had come to the dun, he saw children playing by the gate, where the king had met him in the old days. And this stayed his pleasure, for he thought in his heart, it is here my children should be playing. And when he came into the hall, there was his brother on the high seat, and the maid beside him. And at that his anger rose, for he thought in his heart, it is I that should be sitting there, and the maid beside me. Who are you, said his brother, and what make you in the dun? I am your elder brother, he replied, and I am come to marry the maid, for I have brought the touchstone of truth. And then the younger brother laughed aloud. Why, said he, I found the touchstone years ago and married the maid, and there are our children playing at the gate. Now at this, the elder brother grew as grey as the dawn. I pray you have dealt justly, said he, for I perceive my life is lost. Justly, quoth the younger brother, it becomes you ill that are a restless man and a runagate to doubt my justice or the king my father's, that are sedentary folk and known in the land. Nay, said the elder brother, you have all else, have patience also, and suffer me to say the world is full of touchstones, and it appears not easily which is true. I have no shame of mine, said the younger brother. There it is, and look in it. So the elder brother looked in the mirror, and he was sore amazed, for he was an old man, and his hair was white upon his head, and he sat down in the hall and wept aloud. Now, said the younger brother, see what a fool's part you have played, that ran all over the world to seek what was lying in our father's treasury, and came back an old carle for the dogs to bark at, and without chick or child. And I, that was dutiful and wise, sit here crowned with virtues and pleasures and happy in the light of my hearth. Methinks you have a cruel tongue, said the elder brother. And he pulled out the clear pebble and turned its light upon his brother. And behold, the man was lying. His soul was shrunk into the smallness of a pea, and his heart was a bag of little fears like scorpions, and love was dead in his bosom. And at that, the elder brother cried out aloud and turned the light of the pebble on the maid, and lo, she was but a mask of a woman, and with insides she was quite dead, and she smiled as a clock ticks, and knew not wherefore. Ah, well, said the elder brother, I perceive there is both good and bad. So fare ye all as well as you may in the dun, but I will go forth into the world with my pebble in my pocket. That's the end of the story. Well, what will his life be like now? Whatever becomes of him, we can be sure he will not, like his brother, simply follow the social codes of respectability, which produce only at best a superficial unity, and at worst break up society into those who are respectable and those who are not. No, the elder brother cannot live like this. He has broken free from the wasteland. I perceive there is both good and bad, he says, accepting that both are part of a unified vision. He goes off into a wider world, no doubt sharing the unifying vision of his touchstone pebble with others he meets. Or perhaps, as the king's daughter of Duntrine transformed into the hag on the beach between two seas, so this prince might transform into that old man who passed on the true touchstone to him. This is another way to serve the cause of unity. In both ways, ringing the bell for service, passing on the touchstone of truth, the essential element is engagement. Engagement with the duties and encounters of the moment. For more about this, I want to close with a story that is, it's not quite a fable, and certainly not a fairy tale, but what might be called a philosophical dialogue. The persons of the tale may be the most innovative and amazing of all the pieces collected as Stevenson's Fables. I won't read it all, but just try to take us through some of it. Here's how it begins. After the 32nd chapter of Treasure Island, two of the puppets strolled out to have a pipe before business should begin again, and met in an open place not far from the story. There's nothing like this in literature, certainly up to that point, this amazing opening. The two puppets are Long John Silver and Captain Smollett, the righteous but lackluster captain of the ship that has taken them to the Treasure Island. They conduct a little dialogue during this break in the action. Captain Smollett speaks with the voice of moral certainty, which in this case condemns Silver as a damned rogue for his treachery. Silver knows he's the villain of this tale, which does not mean that he is immoral. He is just playing out the role assigned to him. Don't you know there's such a thing as an author? Smollett asks, understanding author with a capital A in the austere religious sense of a strict moral judge. Silver understands the issue of authorship a little differently. Such a thing as an author, returned Silver derisively. And who better than me? What I know is this: if there is such a thing as an author, I'm his favorite character. He does me fathoms better than he does you. fathoms, he does. And he likes doing me. He keeps me on deck mostly all the time, crutch and all, and he leaves you measling in the hold where nobody can't see you, nor wants to, and you may lay to that. If there's an author, by thunder, but he's on my side, and you may lay to it. Smollett insists on asserting that the author is concerned only with moral righteousness. I know the author's on the side of good. He tells me so. It runs out of his pen as he writes. Well, that's all I need to know. I'll take my chance upon the rest. Silver replies with a different perspective. What is this good? I made a mutiny. I've been a gentleman of fortune. Well, by all stories, you ain't no such saint. I'm a man that keeps company very easy. Even by your own account, you ain't. And to my certain knowledge, you're a devil to haze. Now, which is which? Which is good and which is bad? You tell me that. Here we are in stays, and you may lay to it. The discussion never comes to a conclusion, since they have to stop when they see the ink bottle opening and the author beginning to write the words, chapter 33. Yes, this fable seems to tell us there are abstract moral precepts, but which is good and which bad? It's not easy to tell, and we can quickly get into absurd positions if we focus too earnestly on them. I perceive there is both good and bad, as the elder son had said. None of us is going to live up to abstract standards. Perhaps it's better then to keep company very easy, as Silver puts it, to play our appointed roles with panache, so the author enjoys it doing us. And it is what makes Long John Silver the most memorable and lively character out of all the vivid characters Stevenson has given us in his fiction. Except, let me say, for the character of R.L.S. himself. So vividly engaged as the narrator and adventurer in his travel writing, and as a restless, exciting persona in his essays. And this is what we call engaging in the moment with heartfelt attention. Unlike Smollett's morality, dividing the world into good and bad, us and them, this engagement leads to a sense of unity with whatever we encounter. This is the one pinpoint of the truth, the best touchstone, the contemplative ideal. Thank you.